Hey, Dylan.
Hey, Matt.
It's another Christmassy day over here at Christmas 365. And this is going to be an interesting one.
Every day we inch closer and closer to Christmas, and today we talk about a special that just says, "Hey, I'm a thing."
So here's where the controversy is, because I can kind of see how you feel about this, because I think we'll get the guest on the show to dive in deeper, but we're talking about Emmett Otter Jug-Band Christmas. And we are joined by someone who's been in the peripheral of my life for over a decade, but we've only really become good friends in the last couple of years. They are the lead singer of Danger Club. They are the lead singer of a solo project that they do called How I Became Invisible. So let's introduce Ndot.
Woo!
Woo!
Oh, hello. What a wonderful introduction.
Ndot, thank you so much for joining us. So here's the thing with Emmett Otter's Jug-Band Christmas, and I know that this was the first time Dylan had ever watched it.
Yes.
Despite being what one could call like a massive Jim Henson stan, last year was the first time I ever saw it. And I wonder sometimes if this is in a similar vein to watching The Goonies, one of those things that you had to grow up watching to have like this is like top tier Christmas special, but like watching it as when you're older for the first time, you kind of don't realize how culturally important it actually was. Does that make sense?
Yeah, maybe, kind of. I don't see the comparison to the Goonies, though, just because I grew up and went to Goonies, and then now I don't like it.
Okay. See, I know a lot of people who just straight up hate it when they see it for the first time. They're like, it's just a bunch of kids screaming. And I'm like, yeah, but when you were like 10, it was great.
But when I was 10, I was one of those kids screaming.
Yeah, exactly. So did you grow up on Emmett Otter?
Yes, I did, actually. I don't want to say I watched it when it premiered because I was not alive at that point, but probably most of... full disclosure, I was born, a year after the HBO premiere.
So that's the big thing. I have the Jim Henson biography, and I knew that there was a chapter about the making of Emmett Otter, so I took it off my shelf and I reread it. And this was a huge passion project for Jim Henson, and nobody wanted to air it. So the story goes that this was a children's book first that Jim Henson had read to his kids and said, we can do something with this. And then on the set of The Muppet Show, he befriended Paul Williams and said, hey, how would you feel about writing music for a Christmas special? And Paul Williams leapt at the idea, and they put in all this production to get it made. Henson was so driven to make this special that he actually invested $525,000 of his own money into the production to make sure that it got completed. And nobody wanted it. So the first year it played once in Canada. And then a year later, HBO aired it once. And then because similarly to something like It's a Wonderful Life, because there was such a small portion of people who wanted this, the ability to buy it for syndication became super affordable. And then around this exact same time, you're starting to get things like Nickelodeon. So these kids channels were like, hey, we'll take it, whatever. It's cheap enough, and we'll put it on TV. And that's really where it started to find the audience that loves it to this day.
You know what was also a passion project done for his kids? Robert Rodriguez's Shark Boy and Lava Girl. So I'm going to just leave it at that.
So what's important about this specific movie, though, is from a puppeteering standpoint, it actually is where they tested a lot of things that had never been done before. This film actually features the first ever remote controlled puppet. There had never been one before. It was, and there's a couple of them, but the main one is the puppet that allows the otters to row a boat and talk simultaneously. So it was in the beginning of that where he was really playing around with these ideas of like what defines a puppet. And if you know anything about Jim Henson, he wanted to get away from a physical hand in a piece of felt and wanted to move to this next generation where he could have complete and total control of the puppet as if it was a human. And this is where he finally got to experiment with it a bit. The work that they put into it is they actually built a genuine river that ran through the sets, and the lighting team actually built a lighting setup that would do a full cycle of a 24-hour day of sunrise and sunset over this like incredible set. Like they got real grass, planted real grass on the set. It was actually a really, really cool. And watching it now, I'm like, man, the sets in this are very impressive for what it is. Apparently, Jim Henson pulling what could only be described as a Stanley Kubrick type move. He made the actors shoot sequences over and over and over again until he felt like the animal movements felt as close to natural as they possibly could. And the whole thing was only shot in 12 days, and then they edited it in 8 days. So it was both a passion project and a rush job all in one.
I mean, making those actors stand around. I mean, just watching this thing, Emmett Otter was probably just as much of an asshole as I imagine on the set.
But those are my fun behind the scenes facts. The only other big thing that I have is that I had a quote pulled up on Wiki that I wanted to read. Don't mind me, I'm talking too much. It said, Emmett Otter was the first time that we had gotten into the kind of elaborate sets that we had, with floors in the interiors where we could walk around wide angle shots with characters coming in through little holes in the floor. We'd cut into the set and remove the floor and then have characters move through the space in waist shots. It was the most elaborate production we had gotten into at that point. The Frog Prince had a platform up, and the Muppet Show was always platform up. But for Emmett Otter, we got right into the scene. We'd have the whole set in 3 dimensions, rigged so that we could pop parts in and out and come out through different openings, which was really, really time consuming. But I thought that was an interesting thing. And sometimes I think it's a key thing to talk about, especially amongst the 3 of us, because we all come from different landscapes of creativity. But I think that there's something to be said about sometimes our best work isn't the work that, like, how am I trying to word this? Sometimes you make something because you need to experiment on how to expand the art form.
Yeah.
And it might not be the best thing you put out, but to you, it's probably the most important thing you put out, because without doing it, like I've was just talking to Dylan before we hit record, but I found a hard drive of literally probably thousands of hours of attempts at podcasts that never saw the light of day. But I am excited to listen to them because I'm sure that in each little one, there is a stepping stone into getting where I got with podcasting stuff. And I think it's the same with when you listen to music that you made in high school, or when you listen or read articles that you wrote, like your first couple articles that you wrote, like you're trying to find your voice, you're trying to push to the next level. And I feel like Emmett Otter's Jug-Band Christmas, if you were to ask Jim Henson, I think he would rank it as like that thing that took the Muppets from just being puppets to like there being a chance to do something like Dark Crystal, for there being the opportunity to do something like Labyrinth, where they had tested out the stuff that became what made those movies work.
Yeah, it's a sense of growth. It's a need to try something new, and you're just growing as an artist, regardless of what medium you're a part of. See, my background with Emmett Otter is friend Tim Babb, who runs the Can't Wait for Christmas podcast, did an entire show on Emmett Otter's Jug-Band Christmas. And I started listening to it, and it caught my interest a little bit. But again, it didn't really intrigue me or pull me in. I didn't know much about the story behind the film until actually you just explained it, Matt. So I am actually interested in going back and checking it out and seeing if it pulls me in a little more. But I still honestly do not see it becoming a regular viewing for my Christmas season. But I respect it. All right.
Yeah,
I respect it.
I think that there's, and I want to get into this with Ndot, because I definitely think that there are things that hold up really, really well to me, and there's things that I absolutely love in this movie, but then there's also things that I'm like, that probably isn't handled as great as it could have been handled. So I'm curious for you, Ndot, when you think about this movie, when you think about this film that, you didn't even hesitate, you're like, Emmett Otter Jug-Band Christmas is what I want to talk about. What is it about this movie that makes it so special to you?
Well, part of it, I think, is what we discussed before. I hate nostalgia as a trapping that people like make their life out of, I guess. Like everyone who's like, oh, remember the 80s? Like, yeah, I remembered. I fucking lived through it. But it's partially is that. Like, it's something, it's just, I honestly don't remember the first time I saw it because we watched it every year around Christmas. We have a copy now at my house. We have a DVD and I have it on my laptop as well. It's interesting watching it now because there's nothing I don't like about it still. Like, there's nothing I go, well, I'd change that. Or it's like, because it's so much of its time in terms of like we talked about the advances in puppetry and in how they shot the various Muppets and stuff. But that kind of adds to its charm a little bit, I think. So, like, there's a scene where they're sliding down it's like a water slide, but into a frozen river. And, like, you could clearly see it's just a doll that they let go. Or then you could see the strings sometimes because it's, like, more of a traditional hand puppet, not like hand in the puppet, but like the stringed puppet. I guess like Pinocchio's
it's a marionette. There's a lot of marionette in this.
Think of the goddamn word. But like you can clearly see the strings. So I think in the more recent, like most recent versions, they might have digitally removed them. I'm not 100% sure on that.
So I have the most recent DVD release, and they kept them in there.
Okay,
and I'm glad that they did, because to quote a very non-Christmas movie, in the movie Fanboys, if you ever saw the movie Fanboys, there's a scene where the premise of Fanboys is a group of Star Wars geeks find out that one of their best friends is dying of cancer and is probably not going to live to see Phantom Menace. So they go and break into the Skywalker Ranch and try to steal a copy of it so he can watch it before he dies. Long story short, he sees the movie. They're not allowed to see the movie. And they ask him if it's any good. And instead of giving them a straightforward answer, he says, it's cool to see the strings. It's cool to see the magic behind what you're watching. And like, that's it. And that's kind of where he leaves it. And I think that that's when people complain about like the changes made to Star Wars. It is like, yeah, no. It's cool that you made that look more professional, but I don't want it to look more professional. Like, there's a charm to seeing the weird edit around the Death Star where like things weren't perfectly put together. And I think that that's what a lot of the charm with Emmett Otter's Jug-Band Christmases is, to me, it's what makes a lot of the Muppet stuff work, is that whenever you watch any Muppet production, especially that Jim Henson like golden age of the 70s into the 80s, every one of those movies oozes a group of friends just trying to make each other laugh. And Emmett Otter has that very lo-fi look, but I also like that it has this very small town country vibe. Like, I love the world of Emmett Otter. I know that Dylan was texting me as he was watching, was like, man, I'm already feeling bored by this. And then I sat down and watched it. And I was like, oh my God, I could just sit and listen to these two otters row a boat and talk about what their Christmas plans are for like another 20 minutes. Like, I'm just so charmed by the world of it.
It's interesting that you mentioned the world, because something I never knew growing up until like, I want to say a couple years ago, when I was like actually kind of looking into the backstory, because I had no idea it was a book first, or that like any of the background outside of Jim Henson made a thing.
Yeah.
The author actually based like the artist author, I think he did the illustrations as well, based the look on it on Upper Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which is,
oh shit.
I live in South Jersey now, but I was born outside Philly. I lived in South Jersey and Bucks County. I lived in Upper Bucks County for a while, and it was like, because just the idea of like the backdrops that they recreated in the show so like perfectly matched the things I would drive by on my way to work.
Yeah.
And it was like, it blew my mind a little bit.
I mean, I think the one thing that all three of us can agree on, whether we love or dislike the movie, is that the John Williams soundtrack is just on par with anything else John Williams does. Just very witty, well-written, beautiful songs.
I think you're mistaking John Williams with Paul Williams man.
Yeah, Paul Williams. Oh my God. And I'm looking at a note that says Paul Williams.
I want to watch this with just a John Williams score happening.
Yeah, there was a second I'm like, wait, did I miss something? Did John Williams do like the score part? Oh.
Paul Williams. The Paul Williams soundtrack, whether it's him doing like this very bluegrassy thing like Barbecue, or something that is, I really think, a legitimately beautiful song with When the River Meets the Sea.
Mhm.
And I've got a bunch of notes about that. We'll get into When the River Meets the Sea soon
Okay.
enough. But when I was watching this, I actually tweeted out, all I want for Christmas is the Avett Brothers to release an EP of them covering all the songs from Emmett Otter's Jug-Band Christmas. I love just the bluegrassy vibe of almost every song in this movie.
Definitely. If there was one thing that did stand out, it was Paul Williams' soundtrack. And even though Paul Williams to me will always be Swan from Phantom of the Paradise, and I like to picture that is who wrote the soundtrack to Emmett Otter's Jug-Band Christmas, because I believe I said to you earlier, Matt, somebody definitely sold their soul to the devil for this to be as popular as it is. And I will take that back, but I did want to slip that in there. If there's one thing I can respect for sure, it is Paul Williams' soundtrack. That is the definite highlight for me.
You weren't into Chuck and the River Bottom Boys?
Okay, all right. I do want to talk about the River Bottom Nightmare Band for a second, because talking about this being a product of its time, as you got this badass group, Chuck Stoat, Fred Lizard, Howard Snake, the pop-eyed Catfish, and Stanley Weasel, and they get up there, you're like, what friggin' badass song are they about to sing? And they get up there and it starts sounding like Foghat. And I'm like, yep, this was definitely considered, this was definitely badass back in 77 for sure.
TIAA is on a mission. Why? Because 54% of Black Americans don't have enough savings to retire. So in collaboration with big-name artists like Wyclef Jean, TIAA released Paper Right. New music inspiring a new financial future. With 100% of streaming sales going to a nonprofit that teaches students how to invest. Stream Paper Right now and help close the gap.
It's definitely dated, but then I also read that, like, if you ask it, there's something that I love about Jim Henson where everyone assumes that he is this like sugary sweet, like he is Kermit the Frog. That's the character that he connects with. And then you always find out that it's like, no, he thought the best song was the River Bottom Boys. He loved doing the River Bottom stuff. Like, he likes the weird, dark stuff. I remember reading, and I was shocked by this because I just always assumed, like, Jim Henson, favorite puppet's got to be Kermit. Why not? But he was always a Roth guy. He was like, no, I love Roth. I love playing Roth.
I respect it. Roth is pretty metal.
Hell yeah.
One of the things that I don't think works in this, and unless I like blinked and missed it here, but I feel like the introduction to the contest just comes out of nowhere, and it's like real clunky how the information is presented. It's just two characters both telling the Otter family about it. Did I miss like a sign that was advertising it earlier or something?
I don't remember.
I'm remembering it the same way you are, Matt. They kind of just like hear the talent contest mentioned. Yeah,
it's just like very expository. Like, I think the first time you hear it is the I forget his name, but the Porcupine character just says to Emmett Otter, like, so what do you think about that talent show coming up? That's some rough exposition dialogue right there. Like, it doesn't flow naturally at all.
We got 48 minutes, okay? We got to get it in.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, like, or are you expecting them to, like, deep seed in, like, some backstory about the contest real early?
Well, no,
it's literally just a vehicle to get to the gift of the Magi part.
I just think that there could have been something. There could have been a sign hanging up, even if they didn't see it, that they walked past. I was like, that has to make sense. That's like storytelling.
Wouldn't that have been just as like convenient if they're like concert contest? Oh my god! $50.
$50.
I'm fine with how they find out. My problem is with that we the audience find out at the exact same time.
All right. Okay.
You know what I mean? Like something for the audience to be like, oh man, they missed that sign. That could have solved all their problems. And then the Porcupine said something, and you're like, oh, thank God the Porcupine passed that information on. I'm very invested when I watch things.
You wanted to Dora the Explorer the contest, basically.
Yeah. No, if it was like Blue's Clues, and I was like, turn around! It's behind you!
There's a talent contest!
So it's very obviously inspired by like the Gift of the Magi, which is fine. but I love, up until a certain point, I love that they lose. Like, I think that that's awesome. Like,
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it's pretty great. It's teaching kids you're not always going to win, but it's what you do after you lose that matters.
Yeah, it's what I love about like The Incredibles, where like essentially the story of The Incredibles is like, yeah, sorry, not everyone's special. So there's two scenes that got me to laugh out loud in the worst way, and they both happen in the talent show. And the one was the horse, the bit with the horse, where they just are like on two opposite ends of the stage and they can't find each other, and then the curtain just drops. Like, that to me is really funny. But the one that like destroyed me, it says a lot about what my sense of humor is the two dancing rabbits with just the big smiles on their faces.
Yes.
I was dying. I was like, this is so funny. And that's like pure Muppet Show humor, where it's just, they're doing something that if you saw on any other show with like human beings, it'd be like, oh, they're doing a tap dance. But like the fact that it's puppets doing a tap dance, but also that they've got the like parody of like any show dancer, like big wide smile with the hands to the sides, just makes it so much funnier to me.
And I think that might have been like the issue that I had, was like, that's what I wanted more of, because I go into this going, oh, Jim Henson, the Muppets, we got the intro by Kermit, like that's what I'm going to get. And that's not really what you get for 3/4 of the flick. Yeah. And I mean, that's more on me. And I'm going to go back and listen or watch it again, and I'll give you an update on a future episode for sure if my opinion changes. But I think that was my flaw, is I went into this wanting that, and I didn't get that.
The bummer for me is that because I've only ever seen this on the DVD, I don't get the Kermit stuff. When Disney bought the Muppets, they didn't buy Emmett Otter, and then didn't allow for the Kermit spots to remain in Emmett Otter.
Yeah, so, I didn't get the Kermit spots either, and I just knew they existed, so that's why I wanted to mention it. Yeah,
I mean, they're pretty important because a lot of what you said earlier about like how they tested out a lot of technology that they hadn't done before in Emmett Otter. They tested out a lot of stuff that they then used in the Muppet movie, including Kermit riding the bicycle without like someone visibly holding him up or something like that. That was the Kermit scenes in Emmett Otters. Is like he's riding a bicycle at one point.
For sure. And there's little dabs of that. So I'm going to ask a question. I've got the vibe that for Dylan, I already probably know the answer, but it's my favorite segment whenever we review a special or a movie. Did either of you cry while watching it?
No.
Okay, so just me.
I mean, I'm not shocked, but
can I ask a question? Is it during When the River Meets the Sea?
It's towards the very end of the movie where I think it's Emmett says, because they're talking about the father, and he says, "We just did what he would have done." Mm-hmm. And I don't know why, but that line was just like, like right in there. Okay. But let's talk about When the River Meets the Sea, because it's the most famous song from the movie. It's sung on multiple Christmas specials, and it's a song that's not about Christmas at all, but it's about dying and passing on into the afterlife.
Yep.
Yeah.
So some of the famous covers of this song, it was covered again with the Muppets, this time with John Denver and Robin sang it on the John Denver Christmas Together with the Muppets special,
which is a record I had growing up.
Yeah, and that's the version that I knew.
When Jim Henson died, the actor who did Emmett Otter sang it at his memorial service. And then fairly recently, Kermit and Robin performed it with Jimmy Fallon on The Tonight Show. So it's a song that still pops up. I do like it. And I like it as a Christmas song, even though it isn't really a Christmas song. Because just last week, we were talking to a mall Santa, and like sometimes Christmas is a sad time for people.
Yeah.
And they deserve songs too. And I've said before that every time I listen to Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, there's a line in that song that makes me cry every single time. For the years we all will be together as long as the fates allow. It's a line that reminds us that like at Christmas time, as much as it's great to be with your family, you're cuddled up in your blankets and stuff, it probably is the day that reminds you of the people who aren't here as well.
Yeah.
More than any other day.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I feel like like the main part of Christmas is like the joy and the love and the presents and everyone gets together and has a good time. There is a definite sense of melancholy that is throughout the whole holiday, which is also based upon the people you love are eventually not going to be there, but also the idea that sometimes people are just alone on Christmas, not because anyone's left them, but just because they just are, and it's a very inherent quality in a lot of music around the holidays, I feel like.
I think that's what, even like a song like I'll Be Home for Christmas, I think is such a beautiful song. I mean, you talk about White Christmas. I'm sure with the old soul that Dylan and I are, we will definitely get to an episode just about the movie White Christmas, because it's it's such a good movie.
It's such a good movie, and we still haven't mentioned the greatest sad Christmas song of all time, Christmas Shoes.
Yeah.
We are going to dedicate an episode to Christmas Shoes.
That's fine. I'm fine with dedicating an episode to Christmas Shoes, but I would say that's like the forced sad Christmas song. We're a bunch of sad boys and girls over 100%.
Here. 100%. Sad boy for life, my friend. Sad boy for life.
I've written a couple Christmas songs, both with Danger Club and How You Became Visible, and like, it's hard to not write a sad Christmas song.
Yeah.
Well, because I think
it's really easy to, like, if you want to do like a nice happy one, it ends up like just edging so hard into cheesy or like forced that it's way easier to just write a sad one.
Well, that's it. I mean, how many new things can you say about how great Christmas is?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what can you say that Paul McCartney hasn't already told?
I love that you're like, how many new things can you say about how great Christmas is on a Christmas podcast that we're doing?
Exactly.
All year long.
I have no sense of irony. So the one question I do want to ask, Ndot.
Yes.
If it was a different question, and the question was, what's your favorite Muppets production, would Emmett Otter still be your choice?
Are we talking just Christmas things or Muppets productions in general?
Muppets productions in general.
I mean, the answer is going to be the same either way. It's Muppet Christmas Carol.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, that is one that will most certainly be covered. I know that Dylan and I I'm pretty sure we've gone back and forth about this over what's the best version of the Christmas Carol. But
yeah.
Muppets is pretty high up there.
Yeah, it would be like top 2 for me. Like, it goes back and forth to Scrooged in my mind.
Oh, Scrooged is so good.
Scrooge
you
is
like
good.
the classic one, right? Or not classic, but like a 70s one, right?
Yeah, my favorite is Albert Finney's Scrooge. It was the musical version. They adapted it to a stage musical as well, and I've seen it like at the Hippodrome in Baltimore, and it'll always be my favorite. I love those songs. It's the one that I grew up on, that my family raised me on. So as much as I appreciate almost all versions of A Christmas Carol, that will be my definitive. Have you seen the Albert Finney musical version from the 70s?
I haven't.
Okay.
And I will say that every November-ish, I find myself hitting like Targets and Walmarts and like looking at their like Christmas DVD bin to see if there's like something I can add to the list that I haven't already bought.
Yeah.
And that one is always like it's always in my hand. And then I'm like, ooh, but they also have the original Miracle on 34th Street that I really need it. And I know that I love that one. So like, it always loses out to something that I probably should have already owned because I love it so much already. But maybe this is the year, you know?
There you go. Yep.
You forced me to watch it for this podcast, and I will watch it.
Yes. As much as I love it, I would love to dedicate an episode not just to Christmas Carol, but to Scrooge, Albert Finney's Scrooge. Oh my, I could talk about that movie for hours.
All right. So I want to bounce the same question to Dylan, and then I'll also answer it, but obviously Emmett Otter is not your answer, but what is your favorite Muppet production?
Honestly, I'm going to split it in two. One, it was already mentioned, A Muppet's Christmas Carol is always going to be my all-time favorite, but a wild card choice, it's more recent, because of the headspace I was in when I saw it, was actually 2011's The Muppets with Jason Segel. I absolutely love that movie. I love the soundtrack. It brings me to tears, that opening number. Everything is great. Everything is grand. Oh my God, dude. I just started losing it. And it's like, oh my God, my old friends are back. Like, so that's what it brought me.
Some exciting news for you.
Yes.
Brett from Flight of the Conchords
Yeah.
who wrote the music for the 2011 Muppets, has been hired to write the music for the Emmett Otter remake that Disney Plus wants to produce.
The worlds collide.
I literally asked that question with that information in my head, hoping someone would answer the 2011 Muppets.
Oh, I friggin' love the 2011. And you know what? Now I'm excited for Emmett Otter's Jug-Band Christmas.
2022 edition.
Yeah, the 2022 edition where Emmett Otter and his entire family are wearing masks and social distance Christmas.
And for me, the Muppet movie is like one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
But also, like, kind of how you had like a dark horse option. For me, I also really love Muppets Take Manhattan, and I feel like it doesn't get talked about nearly enough.
No, I agree. I was waiting for you to say Muppets Go to Space. So.
No. Ndot, I know that usually we want to promote the thing that you've done most recently. So I'm definitely going to let you talk about the How I Became Invisible album that came out a couple months ago. But on top of that, obviously, Danger Club wrote a Christmas song.
Yes.
And I feel like it'd be appropriate to end this episode with it. So talk about the How I Became Invisible album and then talk about that Christmas song, and we'll end on that.
Okay. How I Became Invisible album. It's a full length. It's called The Wave Returns to the Ocean. It's kind of a, I want to say maybe not a sum up of a year, but it's about my experience with transition and kind of moving through a new phase of life while also trying to navigate through a global pandemic that could potentially kill me, amongst other things. But it's also a fun pop punk album. I'm pretty proud of it. It's probably the best thing I've done to this point. And I feel like, and this is just me, trying not to be narcissistic, but I feel like I've done some pretty good things with some pretty good people. So that's pretty cool. But you can find that along with a whole bunch of other music, because I am constantly recording at howitbecameinvisible.com, including a Christmas song that I put out 2 years ago called Santa Gritty.
Yeah, maybe we should end on Santa Gritty. I think but tell people where they can also check out the Danger Club.
Danger Club, you can find at dangerclubpa.com. We did a Christmas song called A Holiday in Flavortown, which has absolutely nothing to do with Guy Fieri. We just thought it was funny. And it's about, how Christmas sucks sometimes.
But yeah, we're going to end with Santa Gritty because, bad things happen in Philadelphia.
Bad things do happen in Philadelphia.
Thank you for joining us, Ndot, and Merry Christmas to all of you listeners out there.
Merry Christmas to all.
If you've been bad or good, but he doesn't give a shit. He knows what you are thinking, so be careful what you say. Sleep with one eye open, he's not messing around today. He's got cigarettes and condoms for all the good joints in this city. So say your prayers, shut your mouth, watch out, it's Santa Gritty.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network. You're listening to the Geekscape Network.